You guys don't even know how excited I am. CN just dropped a brand new healer to the game and it's about time that we got a new one. I can't even remember the last time we got a new healer. I think it was Zancio who was our recent healer, or was it Elma actually? It was out of those two, but this guy is part of the strategy faction. And thank God he is, because they're lacking some in that department. And we ain't going to talk about the Meteor faction. And there's also this character, and she's pretty cracked. But we're gonna be talking about the male healer that we got first, and his name is Lugner. He's part of the Glory Strategy and Rebirth faction. His talent for every ally within 3 blocks of him, his healing increases by 2% up to 10% at 3 stars, 3% to 15% at 4 stars, 4% to 20% at 5 stars, and at 6 stars it will be 5% up to 25%. At the start of the battle, he'll get a commandant that he can then choose on the enemy at the end of his turn, and we'll go into that in just a little bit. However though, when the enemy triggers this effect, they will get 2 stacks of sin, which cannot be dispelled or blocked, and is able to stack up to a max of 7 times. If they have 4 stacks of sin, then they have their damage taken increased and their attack and int decreased. And if at 7 stacks, then they cannot use their active skills, which will only last for 1 turn though. If the enemy does not receive any sin on the first turn, then they lose 1 stack of it, but if they don't get any on the second turn, then all of it will be removed. Which kinda sucks because that will mean that you'll have to specifically target those enemies, and you kinda wanna use it on enemies that will pose more of a threat. For his 1C, it works kinda the same as the basic heal skill with no cooldown, but this one has a little extra stuff added to it. It heals a single ally and gives devotion, whereas the hero class is turned into holy, and before entering battle, the enemy gains 2 stacks of sins, and then after battle, they will heal for 3 times of Lugner's int. His 2C lets him select one enemy to apply discipline on them. Now this one is kinda confusing. I don't really know what the subject to all commandants really means, but I think it makes him unable to use the commandants in exchange to select one enemy to be unable to act if they have 4 or more stacks of sin. I could totally be wrong on that one, but it's just my guess. Then at the end of his turn, he heals his allies within 3 blocks. The translations on these stuff are always weird, but if I have to guess again, I would say that he's able to make the enemy not be able to act on the next turn only if they have 4 more stacks of sin, and he himself gains discipline for 2 turns that will heal his teammates within 3 blocks. Then his 3C has a passive that gives a random enemy who doesn't have sin to gain 2 stacks of them, and each time they trigger a commandant, they will get a random debuff. This will also heal while dispelling 1 debuff, and at the end of the turn, all enemies with sin will gain a debuff for how many stacks of sin they have. So if they have 4 stacks of these, then they get 4 weakening debuffs. Now with his commandants, I'm gonna go a little bit more in depth with these. So whenever he ends his turn, he gets to choose 3 different types of them. And you have to choose wisely because the way how these commandants works will determine whether or not the enemies will get those stacks of sins. So the first one is reckless behavior. It will make it so if the enemy moves 3 more blocks, then you get 2 stacks of sin. Then the second option is evil words. So if the enemy doesn't use a skill that doesn't inflict any sort of damage, then you get 2 sins. So it's good to use on enemy healers and stuff like that. The third one is sin thought, which makes it so before the enemies does any damage, they get 2 stacks of sin. Oh, and by the way, here are the debuffs he can give. They're nothing too crazy, like cannot receive any buffs and passive skill disabled, thankfully. Although I'm pretty sure most of these can be blocked off by something like Swordsman's Medal. I know it was a lot to digest right there, but think of this guy as a healer who can also make your opponent weaker. Think of that kind of simple thought process. This guy is really gonna be good, especially for regular PvE content. He'll be useful for something like Ancient Beckoning and some challenge stages, not only as a healer, but also because he can make the bosses weaker. So yeah, once this guy comes out, if you're planning on pulling for him, get him, build him up, and take him in for those kind of stuff, and you might not regret doing so. He also sounds like a pretty good character to bring for PvP, but maybe against people who still rely on tanks or likes to play things really slow. What I mean by this is that with the way the meta is in CN, barely anyone relies on tanks anymore. And not just only on CN, but we already started that shift in global. And so Apex just hasn't been the same because everyone are just rushing in on like the first, second, or third turn. So that means you won't really have the time to spread more and more of these stacks of sins to get all of its full benefits. You might see this guy here and there, maybe when against the right opponents, but it's quite unfortunate that he came out during this time and age for PvP. Polyao. I don't really like that pronunciation, so I'm just gonna refer to her as Polly, which is the second character. And my god, man. I really dislike her design. To me, it just doesn't feel or look right. I like the way how Lugner looks. He has that strong, respectable looking type of appearance that you just gotta go down on your knees and kiss his hands. Pause on that. But don't let that distract you from the fact that she is actually cracked out of her mind. She's part of the Dark, Helios, and Rebirth faction. For every character, and I think that even includes enemies as well, who are around her within 3 ring range at 6 stars, her attack and defense increases. And when her range skill deals damage to 3 more enemies at 3 and 4 stars, but if at 5 and 6 stars, it would be 2 or more enemies. She is able to apply defense down. I think it could be damage taken increase as well. I'm not really sure. But it will last for 2 turns, and she will gain immunity to debuffs and reinforcement for 1 turn. But at 6 stars, then those 2 will last for 2 turns, which already sounds dummy broken. As for her unique skills, she's one of those that actually has 3 of them. First one is Sweep, which is an AoE that attacks in 3 blocks along and is able to knock enemies back by 2 blocks. Second is also an AoE that disables a random equipment to enemies that were hit by the skill for 2 turns. But if it is a regular enemies, then a random stats will be reduced for 2 turns. I think the range on this was like 1 ring, I'm pretty sure. And her third unique skill is an interesting one. It deals AoE damage to a single enemy within 1 block of her that moves them somewhere else nearby her, and if you get the enemy to move and is on a defensive terrain, she can act again. The skill is already asking for too much. It's one thing that if you're able to move them, but being on a defensive tile as well, it's just really terrible. And while I'm at it, she does have the Indomitable skill, which lets her revive, so just bring that. The other one is just not really good at all. Her 3C is an AoE that attacks in 6 blocks long and 3 blocks wide. It will increase her attack and defense by 20% for 2 turns, and when she uses this, she teleports to the furthest point of the skill. And not only that, whatever enemies she hits along the way, she drags them with her. Also, she is able to clear up any terrains and is able to apply her own terrain, which just makes it easier for your team to bypass the terrains, which will last for 2 turns. Afterwards, she does another AoE within 2 blocks, which will stun 1 to 3 enemies for 1 turn. So yeah, the first time she uses the skill, it won't do a whole lot, but the second time, her second AoE will actually hurt a lot. Another thing about this is that for every 4 rounds, the range on the skill will be reduced, only for PvP. Yeah, I wasn't kidding when I said that she is actually cracked out of her mind. She's a strong, bulky AoE attacker. I don't really have much to say about her. She's just that great. She does have access to a physical guard skill as well, but unfortunately, she suffers from a problem that a lot of characters have: short legs. But luckily for her, she can use the Apex boots to help with that. Or, you could use Breeze on her. But the general idea of using her is that you want to use her 3C, which has a pretty good range already, in order to get close to the enemies. And if she survives, then it's another bonus so that she is able to follow up with another AoE skill. 2 new soldiers got released as well. First one is called the Sea Priest. They do magic damage, and when in water, their attack and magic defense increases by 40% and their healing effects increases by 30%. The second ones are called the Holy Guardian, which also does magic damage, but the defense and magic defense increases by 30%. And when attacked, if the character is a holy class, then it will be increased by 30% more, which is pretty alright. I mean, like, if anything, the Shrine Maiden is generally the best when it comes to trying to survive. But what sucks about the Shrine Maiden is that they really only get the bonus if they are at 100% HP. They aren't too bad though. So that means we actually have 4 more soldiers left to be announced that Zilong Games have teased. There's going to be a equipment banner which usually drops 2 weeks later after the update, and these equipments are what it would look like if they are max level, by the way, so just putting that out there. First one is a weapon that gives plus 10% int and has a 100% chance to give the enemy not being able to receive any buffs for 1 turn, which is pretty freaking good. So someone like Light of Genesis and Lucretia could definitely use this. The armor, which is pretty weird, like I said, the translation is totally just whack. But what it actually does, the defense and magic defense is increased by 5%, and when guarding, it's increased by 10% more. The helmet also has a pretty weird translation, but it gives 10% HP and the attack is increased by 8% when being attacked. Lastly, the accessory gives 5% increase to all stats and gives immunity to stun and passive skill disabled. The real prize of this equipment banner has gotta be the accessory. It's gonna be good on a lot of tanks, especially when they have a skill that lets them be revived. The weapon is also pretty great as well for some single target mages. Now into the 2 new exclusives. First one is for Ricky. Again, another weird translation, but this one will increase his HP and defense by 5%, and when he fights enemies in the direction he is defending at, from his talent by the way. His damage dealt increases by 10%, and if Shelfaniel is on the team, both of the skill damage increases by 5%. This one is really not that bad, but also just pretty decent. The second exclusive is for Ashemar, which gives 10% HP, and his skill damage increases by 10% when having a dance partner, and at the end of the turn for both her and the dance partner, they both get a random immunity buff for 1 turn, depending on the dance position that they are in. So you can get stuff like immunity to fixed damage, immunity to being unable to use active skills, and immune to mobility reduction. Ashemar is definitely the better one, but unless you really use her, then you could get it, but at the same time, these equipments aren't really a must need. More casting skills being added, and for us global players, we should be getting these in about 2 months with the release of Lightbringer and Adon Camel. But basically, they're like extra passive skills that you can have on some characters. Some are just small stuff, and some of them have big benefits. First, we got Kuwabawa, which gives him plus 10% attack, and he is able to act again with this 3C. Second is for Mystery Knight, which gives her 5% increase to her int, and at the end of her turn, if her movement total is at 20 or more, then her attack and int is increased by 20% and gets plus 3 mobility for 1 turn. Third is for Ilucia, which will increase her command range by 1, and when fighting in water, her damage dealt increases by 20%. Last one is for Renata, which gives her 5% attack, and before she starts battle, she applies Dragon Seal, which will need a 1 turn cooldown before it can take effect again. All of these are actually really good. Well, maybe not Ilucia that much, but still, if you use any of these characters, unlock their casting skills, you might notice some big difference. And my favorite one out of all of these is Kuwabawa, since it will help him become more offensive, which is what he really needed, because Kuwabawa is like a combination of an attacker and a tank. We got some new skins as well to take a look at, but the first one we're going to be going over is Polly, which is an Echo of Light. It looks nice, but I still don't really like it. I might just be biased on it, and I know some of you guys have different tastes, and I totally respect that. And here's the Echo of Light skin for Lugner, which looks pretty amazing. And I like how you can see the butterflies here helping him lift his scarf or whatever that thing is, like he's some sort of Disney character. But we're not done right there. 2 more new skins to show off, and this one is a Halloween theme for Lucretia, and I ain't gonna say anything. And our last new skin of the month period for this update is for Archon, which you can get from the Macho Lotto along with some other skins. For new content, there's this farmable event that you can play a bunch of times to get the materials you need to exchange for some rewards. Then eventually, later on, challenge stages will open up and you can get some controllers for completing them. Then we got part 4 of the Corona stages, where you can get more Morning Stars and Prayers. Yeah, all that good stuff. And I really wish that they could think of something new, like a brand new type of content for us to try and have never seen before. I know we got the new tower defense mode that came out during the 3rd anniversary, but other than that, all we've been seeing are the Forbidden Battleground, Dimensional Expedition, the Golden Voyage. Those are the main things we've been getting besides the, the story modes and the farmable events. They may be fan favorites, but you gotta give us something new for the player base to try out, because if they see something new to the game, like something out of the ordinary, then that will actually spark some interest. But one thing that I gotta give Zlong Games prop for is that the stages are never too easy, even when you bring along OP characters. And I feel like that's part of what's keeping the game alive, besides the PvP aspect, and of course, the waifus. Not everyone is into the same thing, because not everyone is into Apex Arena. I can go all day about this, but I'll save that topic for another video. If you guys enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more, and feel free to let me know down in the comments how you guys feel about all this. Lugner may not see a whole lot of light in PvP with the way the meta is, but for PvE, I'm certainly confident he'll be one of the best healers and debuffer you can use when up against bosses. Polly is definitely going to be the best to use in PvP, and that might just be it. But yeah, thanks for watching, your fellow Z.